please tell me your full name and when and where you were born?
William A. Stokes. I was born in East Bernstadt, Kentucky, Laurel County, on December the 22nd, 1936. Take that back. My birth certificate says December the 22nd. My mother said I was born on December the 28th. She said Dr. Brock came around, was born at home, and he wrote down on the envelope the dates he bring the kids in the world, and he had our dates mixed up, and he said the 22nd instead of 28th. So let's make that, for official record, is 22nd December 1936. I don't know whether my twin brother said that or not, but I'm sure he's going with the December 22nd, 1936.
Do you have any family members that are serving or have served in the military?
Yes. I had two uncles served in World War II, and I had some grandparents, men, was in the Civil War. But I don't know the exact dates of that. But my uncle was in the European theater, and one was in the Pacific theater during World War II. They both survived it and came back alive.
Do you want to share about your brother's service?
Bob, my twin brother Bob, he was in the Air Force, retired Air Force, and he was in Guam on B-52s during the Vietnam War, and came back and got stationed in Andrew Air Force Base on Vice President's airplane as a crew chief. He spent the rest of his time there in Andrew Air Force Base before he retired. He had a gravy job.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
Yeah, let's see. I was working at Pillsbury in Hamilton, Ohio. And I was working on the assembly line. We're taking the cake mix off the line and putting it on flat, well, what's those little things that pallets when you stack the cake mix, cases of cake mix on that, and the forklift come picks it up and put it out on the truck or on the train. So that was hard work.
What motivated you to join the military?
Well, Bob was in the Air Force. He went in before I did, so I thought I'd go in the service too because he was a glimmer. Well, back then, you didn't have jobs, wasn't that plentiful to begin with. So I think we just went into service just to, and I didn't wait for the drafts. I just went ahead and volunteered service.
Why did you choose the Army, that specific branch?
Well, that was more like a man's job than a bus driver's job in the Air Force. They call the guys in the Air Force bus drivers. So I did in the Army, you could consider a man.
What happened when you departed for boot camp and during early days of training?
Oh, that was in 57. May of 57, I went into Fort Riley, Kansas. And man, that was in summertime, and that was hot. And boot camp was rough. We had all that, and one time we was out there in the field for training, and we had a grass fire going. And we had to take our ponchos, and sit there and beat the fire. That was a hot job too.
Do you have any memories of your instructors that you would like to share?
No, they did a fine job. The instructors were good. They were knowledgeable, and they were Korean War veterans, so they knew what's going on. And the rank was hard to get then because they had the reduction from the service. They had too many people in the service, so rank was hard to make. And they wanted to get people out, and they didn't take hot kindly if a sergeant gets drunk and disorderly conduct and all that stuff. So they usually bust them back down to a couple ranks.
Did you receive any specialized training, and if so, what kind?
Well, I had in basic training, I was an advanced infantry soldier. We had extra time for combat stuff training.
How did you adapt to the military life? Would you tell me, please, about the barracks food and physical regimen?
Oh, I enjoyed it. I loved the Army. I liked it. We had the old World War II barracks, and you had to get out there and you wax those floors, but the buffers and everything, and it was something else. One thing about it, though, everybody worked together, and they have to fall out for inspection and all that stuff. And that was just, you had to learn to take orders to give orders, in other words, but I enjoyed it. I lost a lot of weight, got about thin down, and I was lean and mean when I came home after basic training.
Did you have a nickname?
No, I didn't.
Which war did you serve in?
Vietnam War. I was over there in 1957 to 1958. That was one tour, and then the second tour I went back over there in 59. No, it was 69 and 70. I've missed the dates on that thing. Now we got 67, 68, and 69, and 70. I came back in May of 70 the last time in Vietnam. I was a combat infantry platoon sergeant the first time with the 1st Cav, 5th Battalion, 7th Division. That's Custer's outfit, 7th, from the 1st Cav Division. And the second time I was over there with MACV, Military Advisory Command. And that was down in the Delta area.
Do you remember arriving and what it was like?
Yes. We flew into Saigon, Tonsanut Air Force Base. We got off, got on a troop bus. They had big war cages on the side of it, keep them in bars and everything. You think it was a prison bus. But I asked the guy, what did they do there? He said, well, that's because the VCs comes in there and they have a habit of driving up on a bicycle and throwing a satchel charge, they call it, so on you, in the windows there. So that's the reason why they kept us. And they always had a bad deal. You should be sitting in a coffee shop in Vietnam, and they were setting to come in and sit down and leave a satchel charge on underneath their table, walk out, and all of a sudden, boom. And you had to watch it. That's one thing about in Vietnam. You didn't have no established front line like in World War II or in Korean War. You had the front line was all around you, 360 degrees.
What were your duties?
I was a combat infantry platoon sergeant in D Company, 1st Cav Division. The first night I got up there, I lost a kid in my platoon. He was a Hawaiian boy. That's hard to get used to. When you go in on the front lines like that, and the Murray Mountain cans will come in up Logbird, Huey's, brings in the supplies, breakfast, and they'll bring in the water for you that day and sea rations for that day. Then they have body bags, and they'll load up your dead when they take out your food and all that stuff that you had that day. And it's hard to go through the line, and you're getting ready to eat breakfast, and you see your buddies laying there in the body bags. And you don't have too much of an appetite, but you know you got to eat. And but you got to have your ammunition. They bring in supplies and take out your dead. And that's your life, 7 days a week, 7/24.
Do you have any other memorable experiences you'd like to share about your time overseas?
Well, as I said, that the praying people, and my wife especially, Ruth Stokes, prayed for me, and her family prayed for me, and my family prayed for me, and everybody, the church members prayed for me, and I have to give God the credit, bring me back alive. That's the truth right there that helped me. I would never made it without their prayers.
Would you tell me about some of the special people you met?
You know, it's hard to think of your buddies, and I've had them call me when I came back from Vietnam. I had ROTC duty at KMI, and I had one major call me up on right there in Louisville there, and he had one of the other buddies with us. We had a conference call, and I'll never forget that. And I've had one of them come by and visit me, Sergeant Snooks. I'll never forget him. He was a fine fellow, and I don't know how it happened to him, but he had come by and see me, and we had talked about old times. He'd tell me that. One time I was company commander, and I said, well, I might take reinforced platoon out on an ambush. I'll never forget that. My first ambush, I was in Vietnam, and well, I didn't get my kids organized and sent out in time to really to stick a good spot because it was getting dark on us. But when I was going to pick the location where I was going to go, and everybody knows where we was at, Charlie was there. They opened up on us, and I got hit. And I was laid in the rice paddy all night long. Didn't know where I was going to make it or not. And then next morning, the medevac come in, picked me up, and took me back to the camp. And I laid there for, well, 3 days, I think. Or maybe a week. I was in the field hospital. Had a wound in the shrapnel wound in the side. And come back. The old man asked me, how you doing? I said, oh, I'm doing, ready to go back to work. So it's going on a patrol that day. What we do, we come in on a Hueys. A bunch of us come in on the Hueys. They call it LZs. Then when we get to land, we jump off the helicopter. They don't sit on the ground because they're most vulnerable when they sit down. They got to get out of there fast because you receive fire. And we go in a cove relief. They call it cove relief. You send your platoons out and go out and come back in. And that may take all day long. You come back. And that's the way they work out. Working, coming in. And you go into a village. Normally they're all deserted. VCs are already gone and because they know you're coming. And I got some pictures to show you some of the villages that I got in. I've had platoon leader. We went into an area. We opened up fire and we killed a couple of them. And I got tickled. My point man, you got a point man, you send it out there every day, but you don't use the same man every day. You got him back in called a rocking chair. We send him back in the middle of the platoon when we're going out. But one day at a time, that's all they can do. Because they looking for booby traps and trip wires and all that stuff. And they're going to be the first one to get shot at. So it's a very stressful job. Anyway, a point man ran around the curve here in the jungles. VCs were sitting down, taking a break. They were eating. One kid was sitting over there VC was sitting over with his AK-47 parked up next to a little jungle place there. Well, he seen us coming. He got up, they deed him out, took out. And point man told me, he said, man, we got one of them. And I got the documents off of him, and he had an old cigarette lighter. And I brought that back and gave it to my twin brother Bob. But it was one of them little Vietnamese cigarette lighters. And I got the flag off of his body. But the rest of them took off. So I called in an air support. There's a whole bunch of them was going out there. And first time I ever called an air support, I told my radio operator, I gave him the coordinates. And it wasn't long. The Air Force had the fighters coming in there, and it was opened up. I said, oh, God, they're right on top of us. I gave them the wrong coordinates. I said, oh, Lord, we're all going to be killed. It sounded like they was going to be on top of us, you know. But actually, it was out there in front of us. It was exactly where I had wanted it. They were good. They were really good. I got back in that night. Company commander said, Sergeant Stokes, he said, how's your side? I said, I don't know. I was opening up my steel jacket. Looked at it, and it had scabbed over, and it was just peeled off, and all it was just an open wound there. But I said, that's all right, I'll make it. And another time, we was on a helicopter. We was going in and making a left bank turn to go into the LZ there. My radio operator was sitting on the floor of the helicopter. I was sitting in a jump seat right beside of him. And he started sliding out the door. We don't buckle in, because when you get there, you got to get out. And I reached over and grabbed him by the radio. That's the only thing I can get hold of is his radio. And his legs was already out the door. I felt so sorry for him. He turned white. I pulled him back in. He was an African-American boy. And I said, he said, Sergeant Stokes, he said, thank you, you saved my life. He wasn't expecting to slide out that fast. Now, the only thing I done was I had hold of the seat, you know, and I grabbed him like this and got him back in. But then when we got off the ground, I had a punji stake. Back then, the VCs had made punji stakes, and what they are is bamboo shoots they stick up in the ground, and they have human feces on the end of it. So when you get wounded, it sets up infection that gets you out of combat. But I didn't report it, so I just kept on going. But that's the thing, I got wounded. That they called a $1 million wound. I was in the bunker, and the platoon leader was with me. And he was in a hammock, had a nylon hammock he stretched across the bunker. And we had sandbags all top of the bunker there. Now, the logbird came in that evening and bringing out the rations, and I was breaking it down, the mail and everything, to the platoons, to the squad. You know, I have squad leaders come up to get that stuff. And all of a sudden, I heard something go boom. And the beam cracked. And I was sitting on a 5-gallon water can, and it called me in, it caved in on me. My head was down on the floor between my ankles. And all that weight was on top of it. It didn't even knock me out. And I was screaming and hollering. It was awful painful that I ever my back. And I wheeled myself because the only air I had was between my legs on that water can. And I was running out of air. And that eventually, they uncovered me. The platoon pulled us out, me and platoon leader. And it was raining. And they pulled me out, and there was all that sand and dirt and everything else. And that rain coming in and filled my lungs up with air. I said, thank the Lord, but my back was hurting something terrible. And they come find out. My platoon leader was in that hammock. All he got was shinned up on his legs. He went to the field hospital and was back in the day, back next day to the field company. I was medevac to Cunyon. They x-rayed me. My back had a compression fracture of the T12, they call it. And they said, well, you got $1 million wound. I said, what's that? They said, you're going out of Vietnam. I said, oh, God, what's going to happen to me and my family? You know. I stayed in the Okinawan hospital for almost 4 months with a back problem. They come find out, he says, the doctors there in Okinawa said, you've got the same kind of wound that President Ted Kennedy or Ted Kennedy had when he had a plane accident, a fracture of the T12. And I said, oh, God. And he said, well, it's the only way we can treat that is lay you flat on your back. That's the only way you can do it. They didn't do no surgery, nothing like that. Just laid there on your back. And but the Lord's watched over me. I got to give him credit because my platoon leader, he went back. And the first sergeant wrote me a letter while I was in Okinawa in the hospital and told me that my platoon leader was killed. They had a 160 round mortar round come in that area, and we always slept together. They had a poncho over us. And there's one round come in there and killed my platoon leader. And if I was there, I'd have been killed too. So the Lord had watched over and got me back. And he brought me back in time for my wife to have my daughter. I was there when she had my daughter. The Lord takes care of you in mysterious ways. You wonder how it happens, you know. But he seen that, well, Ruth said so. She stood on the Bibles in her bedroom saying that, Lord, bring him back so he can see the baby born. She told me that later. And I was there. I was there. She was nice about that. The Lord took care of me, and I got to give him those credits for that. And another thing, too, when I came back, I was a basket case. And she had patience to take care of me because I wasn't too good a company to begin with. First night I got home, I'll never forget. She reached over and scratched her head. I went up and turned it in the floor, man. I could have, that strange sound, you know. But and another time, this is with Mac V. The second time was with Mac V. I was in a Jeep going to the team headquarters, Team 88. Charlie opened up on us. I was in the passenger side of the Jeep. I had a driver. And AK-47 shot the radiator off the cap, off the cap of the Jeep. It just missed me somehow. The Lord took care of me. He watched over me. I would have been shot all to pieces, but it just knocked up the radiator, and I told my driver, I said, keep on going. The steam is flying all over the place. We had to get out of that area. It's something else.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home?
That's a funny thing. I'd go to Mac V. I mean, to Saigon, to USO Club there, and you could call home. Well, I wrote every day. You know, you can write on a pack of a C ration box, and you get your free mail. You know, just write up there, you send it out. And I wrote every day, but the mail just piled up, and you don't get it. She didn't get my mail. She'd get about 4 or 5 letters at a time, and I get about 4 or 5 letters at a time from her. You know. But Sergeant Stokes, he was good about that. He always go in and make the mail run. But this time I was going to make the mail run. That's when we got shot up. My driver got okay. We both got through it all right. But from then on, I had to Sergeant Stokes go get the mail.
Were you awarded any medals?
Yeah, I had the Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and Army Combination Medals and all that stuff. But they could kept the Purple Hearts. That's hard to get. The only time you get a Purple Heart is with combat wounded.
Would you tell me about the day your service ended?
It was in Hawaii. That was retirement. I was going to Schofield Barracks. Then in January. Let me tell you the time about Ruth coming over to R&R in Hawaii. That was a good time. It was in January. And it was snowing, cold back here in the and she met me in Hawaii, and I come in from Vietnam, and she was there waiting on me. We had a good time. Money was no object. We saved up for our money. Back then, I think she said it was about $20 to $6 a night at Hawaii and Hilton, military discounts in, and we enjoyed it. I didn't want to. The minute I got there, I really enjoyed it, but then closer to the time to go back to Vietnam, I was dreading it. I didn't want to go back, But we were in the car, and I was driving through the pineapple fields and the sugar cane fields, and all I could see was VC coming at me. That was hard. I'm driving through there. It was hard to get through that, but we made it. She went back to States. Got Louisville Airport there, and it snowed in. She couldn't get home. She had to catch a bus. It took longer, I think, on the bus than it did when she flew from California to Louisville. But she got home, but the baby was starved. But they didn't want to leave me, and I didn't want to leave because we had a good time.
How did you return home from Vietnam?
I left Okinawa. And I got orders to go to Fort Benning, Georgia. I come in on a C-141 cargo plane that had big good pallets up there, and I had tropical khakis on. And the C-141 flew to Anchorage, Alaska. I landed in Anchorage, Alaska in October, and it was cold up there. And I had nothing but khakis on, short sleeve tropical khakis on. I got off that, you had to get off the plane for refueling. That's where we stopped there in Anchorage for refueling. I got off, man, I started shaking, shivering, and got back on. And, crew chief on the C-141 felt sorry for me. He loaned me his flight jacket. I've got a good flat jacket and crawled up on top of pallets, went to sleep on a bunch of duffel bags. And I got into Charleston, South Carolina. We landed there, and I got a plane. I forgot what kind of plane it was. Anyway, we flew into Louisville, at the Louisville airport. They met me there. My wife and mother and my brother, I think Bob was with them. When I got off the plane, everybody didn't recognize me because I had lost so much weight in the khaki. And Ruth says, "There's Bill." Mom said, "No, that's not Bill." She says, "Oh, it is." They argued about who it was. And finally, it was me. They got it. But it was a good time, though.
How did you readjust to civilian life?
Through prayers, and my wife's been with me. That was hard. I was drinking in bed. I was smoking, drinking, and it was tough. But, they stood by me.
What was your career after the war?
Oh, I had good assignments. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed it, especially at KMI. I was an ROTC instructor at KMI. I loved it. That was the best deal, and she loved it too. And then another time was I'm trying to think. Oh, Hawaiian duty. I was stationed there in Hawaii. I like that. She loved it too. And then my daughter loved it too because she was started in school in Hawaii, in grade school. And I think she was about 4 or 5, maybe it's about 6 when we came back from Hawaii. And I like that too.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
No. I didn't want to talk about it. Well, actually, I just want to keep to myself, really. And there's a lot of them wanted me to join the DAV and Vietnam veterans and all that stuff, and I never did.
How did your wartime experiences affect your life?
Well, I tell you what, it made me appreciate life and the good Lord. I mean, I'd been insane if it wasn't for him. I would have been a basket case. And it was close to it. It was just pretty rough.
How has your military experience impacted your feelings about war and the military in general?
Well, I'll tell you about my experience. When you go to war, I went over, I was lucky. I went over as an individual. I didn't go over as a group. Like I was with the 34th Armored Group in Fort Irwin, California. I got orders to go to Korea, and they got orders to go to Vietnam. The whole unit went to Vietnam. And when they got over there, they were green, and they lost 2/3 of their outfit. I was lucky, and when I went to Vietnam, I went by myself, and then when I went into a unit, there was a lot of guys there, been there a long time. There's 2 months that you got is most vulnerable in combat. The first 30 days you're in Vietnam, you're not sure yourself. You're green. You can make some stupid mistakes and get yourself killed. The last 30 days, you said to yourself, well, I've survived 11 months over there. Now I know everything. And that's when you get careless and make some stupid mistakes and get yourself killed. So you got to watch. It's the first 2 months, of the first month and the last month in Vietnam. You got to be very, very careful. I know last month I was in Vietnam. We got RPG-7 rockets coming in on our base camp there, and it was hit far from you, where my bunk was at. It was a dud. The rocket was dud, and the major said, Stokes says, Sergeant Stokes says, you go on that. That was 5 days before I was supposed to leave Vietnam. He said, you go in Saigon. I don't care what you do while you're in Saigon, but you're getting out of here. So he let me go. I said, well, I didn't argue with you. I said, that's how the Lord had protected me. It was a dead, dud rocket hit in the corner of my bunker where I was sleeping. So the major said, you ain't staying here no more. I said, okay. That's the worst thing about being in Vietnam. You got to be careful. You go in. I was a sergeant. When I went over there, I listened to the privates because they've been there longer than me. They can tell me what I need to know to survive it. And I tell those kids when they come in there, that's the first thing I tell them when I talk to them. Listen to your people been here longer than you have, because they know, and they'll tell you the truth to keep you alive. You can make some stupid mistakes and don't realize it. And so you listen to the first month, be extra, extra careful. And the last month you're over there, you be extra, extra careful. Because you think you know it all, and you're going to be brave and do that stuff, some stupid mistakes. That's what gets a lot of kids killed over there.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view this interview?
I don't know. I was always patriotic, and I was proud of my service in the Army. But I wouldn't want my grandkids to go through it. I like to have, we live in peace, but I know it's impossible. There's be wars and rumors of wars, as long as there is people living. But if you're in combat or in service or something like that, take your orders from your superiors. They know better than you do. And when you do go in, listen to them very carefully and pray and keep your house in order when you do go, because there's no atheists in Foxhole. People tell you there's not an atheist one in the Foxhole. That's the truth. I'll stand by that.